This is Lunchtime Agenda.
Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Agenda. I'm Tom Connell. The carbon tax has dominated Australian politics since the 2010 election. Now it is inching towards its decline. The government has reintroduced the repeal legislation in the Parliament today with an aim to getting the legislation passed in the Senate in July. That will of course be the first time the government has the numbers in the Senate because Labor and the Greens will lose their grip on the upper house.
Repealing the carbon tax will reduce the cost of living, make jobs more secure and improve the competitive position of our country. That's what it does. It reduces the cost of living, it makes jobs more secure and it improves the competitive position of our country. Now, why would anyone be against that? Particularly when it's what the Australian people voted for.
Mr Shorten remains in denial of the election result. He is running around, so we're told, telling business that he believes the carbon tax is going to be repealed, and don't worry, he won't try to bring it back. If that's his actual view, there's a simple task: get out of the way in the House and allow your senators to vote for repeal.
Certainly a familiar pitch from the coalition. Tony Abbott arguably won office with momentum gained from campaigning against the carbon tax. But while it delivered him votes in September, is it still a major vote winner? A poll from the Climate Institute has found that for the first time, support for the carbon pricing laws, and perhaps that wording was a factor in this outcome. After 2 years, though, of a carbon tax, this poll found that 34% of people support a carbon price, 30% oppose it, while 36% are ambivalent, not caring either way. Hardly overwhelming support for a carbon price, but no longer, perhaps, a disastrous issue for Labor. Labor leader Bill Shorten would no doubt hope so, but he was trying to turn attention away from the carbon tax today and back on the government's budget.
Clive Palmer says he doesn't support the carbon price. Listen, what the government do with the crossbenchers is a matter for the government. But what I do know, most definitely, you could bet your house on it, is that the Abbott government does not want to talk about their unfair budget.
Well, for more on this and the rest of the day's political debate, I'm joined here in the studio by Labor Senator Lisa Singh and, of course, Liberal MP Andrew Laming. Thanks both for your time today.
Thanks, Tom.
Andrew Laming, it felt a little bit like times past today, a stroll down memory lane, if you like, for many journalists. A simple message from Tony Abbott urging Labor to help him, in this case, scrap the carbon tax. But we know, don't we, that this will be repealed already in July. The PM seems to want to talk about what perhaps is a safe topic for him against what perhaps is a bit more precarious, the budget.
Well, the carbon tax has to go. 15 million Australians voted late last year. We know it's costing $11 million a day for every delay after July 1. We're just hoping that the Labor Party sees reason before the vote comes to the upper house.
When it comes to the poll I spoke about, I'm sure you can pass your own comments on it, but are you surprised by the poll, and is it perhaps because the wrecking ball we were told about didn't quite arrive in terms of the economy?
There were some colourful adjectives to describe the tax, but in reality $550 on average per family is cut and dried. Look, I think people now realise it's a government determined to get rid of this tax, and in many ways people are less concerned about it because they know the Prime Minister is going to get on with the job and get rid of it.
Lisa Singh, Labor appears somewhat in no man's land here. Bill Shorten is apparently telling business leaders that it will go, the carbon tax will go, even though he won't help it to go, reassuring them if you like. But Labor, of course, then opposed the direct action plan come July, and there's no firm Labor policy at the moment to replace it. So is Labor going to look like it's not actually promoting anything on climate change?
Oh, no, not at all, Tom. This is a complete distraction by Tony Abbott at a time when his budget is going down like a lead balloon. It is very unpopular with the Australian people, so he's bringing this issue back on the agenda. Labor's policy has always been clear, and that is to support an emissions trading scheme. We said that the carbon tax would come to an end. An emissions trading scheme is what should replace it, which is what we see the world going to.
But specifically in July, we've already heard from the Shadow Environment Minister that they'll take something along those lines in the next election, but they don't know what. So you're going to be in this position saying, no to direct action, carbon tax is gone, and we'll work out something soon.
Well, Tom, direct action is an international joke. I mean, here we have a budget that rips the heart out of low-income, middle-income Australians, and then the government wants to introduce direct action, which is the most expensive policy position to go down. It's been, you know, completely laughed out of in the international community. It is not a decent replacement to what we currently have, which is going forward an emissions trading scheme. That has been Labor's policy, and that is what the international community all are moving towards as well, which is what we've seen from the US recently.
What might need to be revealed is perhaps details down the track. Andrew Laming, I heard you mention before the $550 better off a year for families. Now, that's true when it comes to the carbon tax, but look at the people as a whole and factoring in the budget. You can't say that any longer, can you, in terms of you coming to government? This big up in letters, you'll be better off financially, isn't going to be the case for all of these families, isn't it?
Look, I've asked people to come forward and find where they feel they'll be hurt by the budget, because in reality $550 a year puts them well in front. The indexation changes are after the next election in most cases, so I'm asking people if they think that they're affected and they don't want the carbon tax removed to let me know. That's not the mood in my electorate. Look, people know we're at the front of the pack.
Problem for tomorrow or next election then?
Well, give people a chance to vote on the results, and like the English government, they've delivered results with a similar approach. We're seeing the English economy turning around, the Bank of England contemplating raising interest rates.
English has an emissions trading scheme in place.
It's a strong economy. It's doing very well.
It has an emissions trading scheme.
But not many of our trade partners do, and that's the point. So we will move with everyone else. We'll still be in the pack, but we won't be out on our own.
All right, I guess we'll watch this space and see if perhaps the movement comes shortly, but meanwhile we'll move on, because 2 weeks ago there was what might be termed a distraction for Tony Abbott when he and Malcolm Turnbull were forced to deny any sort of internal dissent. Now it's Bill Shorten's turn. Troy Bramston from The Australian has penned an article claiming the opposition leader is being undermined by Anthony Albanese, who has, according to Troy Bramston, been backgrounding journalists, telling them that Bill Shorten is not doing a good job as opposition leader. This claim has been denied by both men. Take a look.
Not at all. Anthony's doing an excellent job, a standout job as Shadow Infrastructure and Transport spokesperson. I and Anthony and the whole Labor team are focused on exposing this unfair budget and the rotten priorities of this government who lied their way into office. I don't believe it's happened at all.
Troy Bramston, of course, is a failed factional operative who's now become a writer of fiction. The truth is that I've been very loyal to Bill. Bill knows that, and he said that this morning. What this morning's article is a series of assertions and hearsay with nothing to back it up.
And you can see that full interview again with Anthony Albanese on PM Agenda this afternoon with our political editor David Spears. But I'll ask our panel in Lunchtime Agenda for some reaction on that. Lisa Singh, have you ever been perhaps helpfully informed that Bill Shorten isn't doing a great job by someone within the party? Are there any whispers out there?
Absolutely not. I mean, I haven't read Bramston's article, but this is complete rubbish. We are an incredibly cohesive team, and I think if you compare it to the government's team, you see a stark difference where you have the Nationals revolting against the paid parental leave policy because it is unfair, and it comes at a time when the budget's been cut for so many low-income Australians, while $50,000 being given to middle and high-income Australian working families. So therein lies the lack of cohesion. Labor is completely cohesive, and I find it a very strange article.
Andrew Laming, the Coalition was pretty keen to play down what I referred to earlier, this supposed dissent, or whatever you might like to call it, between Malcolm Turnbull and Tony Abbott. So you'd be happy to play down this article as well?
Look, it's chronic leadership instability for Labor, and they've had that now for years. They were going to fix that, of course, weren't they, with their plebiscite, and so they ended up with People's Choice Albo and Pollies' Choice Bill. It hasn't fixed anything at all. I think Bill Shorten is doing a reasonable job as an opposition leader in his first 6 months. When I looked at the article, I couldn't see much germane in it to causing instability, but it's a bit hard to say that a person is on one hand trying to destabilise the leader and on the other hand is planning on leaving politics, so a lot of it didn't add up.
OK, well, played a pretty straight bat there, so I think we'll move on. Peter Grester today, a decision, of course, is going to be made on the Australian journalists with this ongoing trial in Egypt. Now, I don't want you to try to obviously just read into the tea leaves or predict or say what might or might not happen, but Andrew Laming, should Australia's general belief, if you like, in freedom of the press mean that the Prime Minister goes further than he normally would on this case in representations in what might happen after whatever decision is handed down today? Should this be a special case, if you like?
Look, Australians who care about freedom in journalism and freedom of speech would be absolutely appalled at what's happening in Egypt, and I was delighted to hear from the Prime Minister this morning that he'd had a one-to-one conversation with the new Egyptian president and
Did it
had
come
really
a bit late?
underlined
Did it come a bit late, that conversation?
Well, they're now dealing with the president of the day, so that's important. I'm sure there's been communications long before this, but I'm delighted it happened, and it was made pretty forthrightly that we did hold those concerns, but obviously also allowing the court to make its decision.
Lisa.